Say hello. Someday we'll be together. Okay. I'm going to share some announcements. Bob York has just handed me a flyer for a virtual candidates forum for Chestertown's council members for the 1st and 3rd wards. It's on Tuesday, October 26th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. The audience will have an opportunity to submit questions for the candidates during the Zoom webinar or by October 25th. There are several links on here if you're interested. I'll give this back to Bob and you can copy them down or talk to Bob some more about accessing those links. Another announcement is to join us on October 31st at 3 p.m. for a service and tour of the Memorial Garden and the Woodland. And I imagine there'll be more about that in this week's reflections. The leadership handbooks for the committee members are available now in the lobby. And I saw several of them out there. And next Sunday's service, 10:31, will be virtual only. Just a reminder, we know we have some signs up. Our guest speaker will be Paula Cole Jones, a nationally known advocate for racial justice. So please plan on watching that from the comfort of your home next week. And one more reminder is that offering baskets, instead of being passed around, we have it on the table in the lobby. And if you're attending via Zoom, please access the donate button on our website. Of course, you can also do that anytime you want to. Just go to the donate button, and also drop off or mail your pledge or contribution to the offering to the church office. So thank you for supporting our beloved community. And I'm going to have Bran lead us in the chalice lighting.
Please join me in speaking our chalice lighting words.
We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts. Thanks. So for today's opening words, I've chosen a translation of a poem by Jalal al-Rumi, who was a religious teacher in the 13th century. And you may have heard parts of it before or the whole thing, but it's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I want to introduce our guest speaker, Bran Lennox. Here's some biographical information about them. Bran Lennox finds the sacred in the wonders of the natural world. and the gifts that music brings to life. A queer and non-binary minister, they seek to explore new ideas of the divine through the ever-presence of transformative change in human experience. They believe in the healing power of compassion to bring needed growth to our world's realities around justice and equity. Brand has recently completed the process of becoming a fellowshipped UU minister and is eager to discover where their path of service will lead them next. I invite Brand for a time of centering.
Thank you so much, Amy. I invite us now into a time of reflection. These words were written by Robert T. Weston, and they're called The Web of Life. There is a living web that runs through us to all the universe, linking us each with each and through all life on to the distant stars. Each knows a little corner of the world and lives as if this were their all. We no more see the farther reaches of the threads than we see of the future, yet they're there. Touch but one thread, no matter which, the thoughtful eye may trace to distant lands its firm continuing strand, yet lose its filaments as they reach out. But find at last it coming back to him from whom it led. We move as in a fog, aware of self, but only dimly conscious of the rest, as they are close to us in sight or feeling. New objects loom up for a time, fade in and out. Then sometimes, as we look on unawares, the fog lifts. And then there's the web in shimmering beauty, reaching past all horizons. We catch our breath, stretch out our eager hands, and then in comes the fog again, and we go on, feeling a little foolish, doubting what we had seen. The hands were right. The web is real. Our folly is that we so soon forget.
All righty. It's time for our acknowledgements of the heart. Each week we take time to share what's in our heart. As we experiment with hybrid services, we ask folks to submit joys and concerns by email prior to the service or on a note card as you enter the sanctuary or in the chat if you're on Zoom. For now, this is a safe place to do our sharing. So I'm going to start here. And first of all, I'm going to light the candle as we've been doing every Sunday for COVID victims. In the United States, there have been, as of the last statistics that I could find, 736,000 deaths from COVID. We also light the families for their the candle for their families as well, and for all of our frontline workers. I want to light a candle for those in our congregation who are facing illness, recovery from surgeries or accidents. And a couple of ones that were just given to me before the service. Linda Weimer is recuperating from knee surgery she had earlier this week. So let's keep Linda in our thoughts as she recovers. And this one is from Annie Lavin. 18 years ago, As service leader, I lit a candle for my first grandchild. Today, as he celebrates his 18th birthday, I light a second candle in gratitude for this wonderful young man, a blessing in my life. And for those joys and concerns shared and those remaining in our hearts, let's take a moment of silence. Blessed be.
Maybe it was a trick of my busy mind in the pre-dawn hour. But the more opening shifts I worked in the coffee shop, the more uncanny the feeling became. As I greeted a stream of barely awake customers, their presences flowed together into one familiar, many-faceted entity. In that first hour of each shift, I would become aware of a sort of public mood of the day. There was no obvious explanation for it. This mood didn't really correspond to the weather, or the day of the week, or the current events of the time. Oftentimes, myself and my coworkers would be the first real human contact a customer would encounter that morning, and yet somehow, without fail, one day they would all come in grouchy, And the next they'd all look like they were freshly in love. So as the weeks went by, these coffee shop interactions started feeling like I was having micro conversations with the local zeitgeist. This emotional unity was both intense and comforting to behold. And to this day, it influences what I believe about humans, that we are not just individuals, but unique facets of a much greater whole. Serving coffee gave me a formative glimpse at something which suggests an experience beyond the isolationist perspective in which I was brought up. We were all caught together in a network of feeling which stretched beyond our individual body minds. And while the musings of a customer service employee hardly constitute substantial proof of something so mystical sounding, there are researchers out there who are doing real science to study this idea of a beyond the body nervous system. Around a decade ago, a researcher named Hilton Jabyasu entered into the continuum of scientists studying an idea called extended cognition. Through observation of common biological anomalies in the animal kingdom, scientists like Jabyasu had started to recognize a pattern indicating that thinking was not necessarily limited to the brain. By now, it is pretty common knowledge that having a gut feeling is no mere colloquialism. In fact, humans have millions of neurons or thinking cells located in the belly. When I consider this, it makes sense to me. As a human animal, I sort of know what that gut cognition feels like. However, it can be a lot more uncomfortable to try to accept the presence of extended cognition as it's observed in other species. When I read descriptions of how crickets have ears in their knees, which relay and respond to sound independent of the insect's brain, I find it equal parts fascinating and disgusting. Similarly, our friend the octopus demonstrates extended cognition with his tentacle arms. The mental math required to move an appendage like that with any accuracy is beyond even the largest of animal brains, and the octopus relies on the arm's local signals to virtually control itself. Scary. Now, by comparison, the most groundbreaking and most controversial example being discussed today feels pretty tame. I'm talking about the humble spider web. Now, arachnophobes in the audience, in the congregation today, you may wish to take a little break, cover your ears, whatever you need to do. I'll let you know when it's time, when it's safe to turn your sound back on or uncover your ears. Researchers seem fascinated by the spider web. It's been studied dozens of different ways within the past 50 years alone. Jabyasu's work, however, has sent biology in a whole new direction in terms of conceptualizing this everyday architectural miracle. Essentially, what's being suggested is that a spider actually uses its web to think. I'll give you a super simple version of the argument. If a bug lands on the web and tightens a thread, that calls the spider's attention, and this is a form of gaining information. If a spider is hungry, it tightens threads where it wants to pay attention. This is a form of seeking information. If one part of the web is catching lots of meals, the spider adjusts the construction of that part of the web to be more reactive. This is a form of storing memory. In theory, these three things make a spider's web functionally indistinguishable from its nervous system. This instance of extended cognition helps explain how something with such a small physical brain can complete such complicated tasks. All right, arachnophobes, you're all set. Storing memories outside the brain is an adaptation that is almost fundamentally human. What's a shopping list? What's a photo album? Albert Einstein reputedly instructed listeners never to memorize something they could just as easily look up in a book. Just like in the homes of our eight-legged friends, however, this storage of memories takes on a shape of its own. Perhaps we create a private library of science fiction novels or record hours and hours of home videos of our families. In such ways, it becomes literally true that what we pay attention to grows. We change our functional environment, and in turn, our environment changes us. And through this cycle, certain things become an extension of a person's experience of the self. African-American theologian and philosopher Anthony Pinn reflects on one's experience of the self through a lens that he calls complex subjectivity. For Black Americans and other marginalized people who are so often treated as objects by the dominant culture, complex subjectivity is, in a sense, the antidote to such dehumanization. At its simplest, this term means belonging. More specifically, it suggests that we experience ourselves in sacred wholeness when we experience mutual recognition with other people. I see you in the fullness of your humanity, and you see me, and together we are affirming that we are whole. People seek out community, truly need community, because without it, their sense of humanity is incomplete. I think of this mutual affirmation as one of the sacred functions of that notorious interconnected web of which we are a part. All of this web imagery brings me back to my childhood. Around age 13 or 14, after leaving the tradition of my upbringing, I started trying to freely conceptualize God for myself. After deciding many things that God was not, I was ready to dream up what it might be. First, I stopped using the word God, and I started using synonyms like divinity, which helped me let go of my previous associations with it. Next, I determined that if the divine was made of anything, it had to be energy. If there's one thing that's pervasive in some form in all corners of the universe, it's energy. Both physics and metaphysics seemed to fit in with this explanation, and so I kept it. A name and substance thus determined, I felt ready to dream up a shape. And so, at age 13, despite having no prior knowledge of Unitarian Universalist beliefs, I started conceptualizing the divine as a universe-sized, interconnected web. It wasn't until adulthood that I learned that this network of energy model is actually a pretty common theological belief, and versions of it are described in multiple common theological belief systems. Knowing what we know about relational existence, however, is it any surprise that humans gravitate to that interpretation? Others who have worked in customer service may have shared that same experience that I had, sensing what I felt of the web while working in the coffee shop. And some people come to this image through observing the many great and small ways in which our individual actions have impact on our communities. Some feel it most when studying the ways that people have always been people throughout history, using the same tools and making the same jokes that we use and tell today. Whichever lens of discovery is used, the same truth becomes clear. We're far less alone than we think. Now, a rather obvious way in which many of us collect consciousness on a daily basis is by using the internet. Fritz Vollrath, one of our spider scientists, outright refers to the spider web as a sort of extra biological computer. Now, I'll fully, if not proudly, admit that I'm part of a generation which has grown up with online technologies so intimately that if I don't have my smartphone with me, I sometimes feel like I'm missing half my brain. It wouldn't be much of a stretch to say that people like me think using our media devices. By Japyasu's definition, cognition is the act of acquiring, manipulating, and storing information, all of which I do on the internet daily. But the main point of contention with this definition of thought is that it does not include meaning making. So is the internet the image of God? That mere question is equal parts depressing and preposterous. But is the internet a tool for meaning making? Now, there's an idea that's worth contemplating. To reflect on the time since the pandemic hit us all last year, I'd say that I've personally experienced moments of profound connection, genuine wonder, and marvelous innovation. If the World Wide Web has become our collective tool for extended cognition, I posit that we could do worse. The internet has delivered all of the articles and conversations which inspired and informed this sermon. It allowed me to filter that data through hours of streaming music, store it all in the cloud, and it's allowing me to share it in this way today that's inclusive of those of you who are in person, as well as those who are joining us virtually. Even under the type of disturbing circumstances which require us to keep physically distant from others, we still have the chance to experience the communion of complex subjectivity. How miraculous! And I've learned how utterly natural of us. I'd like to challenge you in the week ahead, when you think back on this sermon, to notice and appreciate those moments when your self-perception expands beyond the brain in your skull and the face in your Zoom window. From the neurons in your gut to an email sent from halfway around the world, to be human is to be given the gift of boundless forms of extended cognition. I feel an expansive gratitude to know that we are together in this wholeness which is beyond oneness. May we all come to recognize the deep value in each unique facet of that wholeness and never give up as we strive to make this vast network a just place where each being is received with reverence. Amen. And now I'll invite you to join with me as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Oh, that's all right. Thank you, Amy. And I'll offer us these closing words. These are from Nikki Giovanni, the poet. I came to the crowd seeking friends. I came to the crowd seeking love. I came to the crowd for understanding. I found you.
Thank you. Thank you for worshiping with us today, both in person and virtually. Have a wonderful week, and take good care. And namaste. Thank you.